Well, I'm Jim Franklin, the senior pastor here at Cornerstone Church, and welcome to a special edition of Cornerstone Live. As you know, we've been saying over the last several weeks of a conference that we are hosting here at Cornerstone entitled Revealing the Rainbow. It's going to be on March the 24th and the 25th. You don't want to miss this. It is on the subject that sadly is spreading across America, and that is this agenda of transgender ideology that is being pushed down the throats of our children, that is definitely indoctrinating them to something that now we realize is very dangerous. I want to talk to you about that today. Now, before you say, well, I don't want to hear that, you need to hear the stories of what is happening to our children, of what is being done to them in the name of education, and what some are saying, well, this is just the way that it is, get over it. No, we're not going to get over it, because we're dealing with the health and the safety of our kids. You're going to hear the story today of a woman as she testifies before a state legislature about what happened to her child. Now, this is a news story that came out of Rialto Unified School District. Now, this is right here in California. You say, oh, this stuff's not happening. Well, let me just read the story from here. This is an individual, a teacher who worked in the pre-K division of that school. Again, these are not seniors in high school. These are not junior high. These are not middle school. No, these are pre-K. These are children that they're going after. And so the whole thing about this was it's not appropriate to talk to children about these issues, about gender, about sexuality in kindergarten. And this individual says, oh no, and I'm quoting from him now, there is a common mythology that children live in this world of pure innocence, and that by introducing or exposing them to the real world, adults are somehow shattering this illusion for them. Therefore, there is a banning of topics and issues that children should not be exposed to, as if they are not experiencing them already. Do you hear what he's saying? He's saying, no, these children need to hear about these issues. These pre-K children need to hear about sexuality. They need to hear about alternative lifestyles. He goes on to say, not talking about queerness in the classroom is not letting children by children. It's telling those people that they do not deserve to exist. He says, oh no, we've got to tell them. Why? Because parents are not telling them. He goes on to say that the teacher went on to say that if parents don't have the conversations with children, it's up to teachers to foster classroom environments that, quote, may make others uncomfortable, close quote. These are children that we're talking about. And this teacher is not alone in this, has an agenda that says, listen, if mom and dad at home are not telling it, even if it makes them uncomfortable to talk about it, we're going to talk about it here in school. I'm not talking about merely the birds and the bees, which is still not appropriate for a child in kindergarten or first, second, third grade. I don't want the school teaching my kids morals. I don't want the school teaching my kindergarten, junior high, middle school. I don't want them inflicting their ideology on them. That's up for parents to do that. But here, this teacher says, oh no, that's up to us. If parents aren't going to do it, we're going to do that. They say, children who are exposed to environments with more fluid understandings of gender are more likely to understand that gender is fluid. Gender is not fluid. So they start with this assumption to be able to say, no, we're going to tell those kids, you're not really a boy, you're not really a girl. As a matter of fact, you may be a little bit of both or whatever. Can you imagine how that's going to confuse a child in kindergarten we're talking about here? You say, I can't believe this type of thing is happening. Yes, it is. And that's where you're going to hear these stories of individuals that are being groomed, I don't know how else to say it, to get into this lifestyle. I mean, think about those of you who have teenage children. You know how confused they are. You know how they go from one issue to the other issue and the decisions they're going to make. And one time it's I'm all for this, another time I'm not for that. Well, we're talking about what this teacher is doing is when these children are merely adolescent, younger, pre-K, that are introducing them to that and saying again, we know better than parents. You need to understand this and you need to see this. You say, well, they'll get through this. No, sadly, they're not. They're not getting through this. We are now hearing story after story of children that are coming out of school because of peer pressure, because of the way the media is today, because of now this ideology that is indoctrinating our children at school, that they're telling them this. And then here's the other thing. They tell these children, don't tell your parents about this. How dare them? Can you believe this? Don't tell your children, your parents about this. You're safe with us. We'll use the pronoun you want to use. We'll help you transition, but you don't need to tell your parent about it. And so you create this confusion in the life of a child that they can't trust their parent. Now, if you don't believe that, then I want to share with you some video of testimony that this mother gave before the Virginia schools. And it's not just in Virginia, it's everywhere. I think here in California, we are one of the most pro when it comes to advancing this ideology than I believe any other state. So if it's happening in places like Virginia and others, then you know that it's happening here. This is the story of a mom that faced one of the greatest nightmares. Her daughter's name is Sage. Matter of fact, what happened to Sage prompted the writing of a piece of legislation called Sage's Law to protect children from the story that you're about to hear. So this is from the Virginia legislature. She is testifying before the committee there concerning a law that carries her child's name. Get ready. This story is going to shock you.
I am Sage's mother, better known as Nana. I adopted Sage after my son died when she was still a baby. She's been through 6 foster homes by then, but we loved her, and she blossomed into a joyful, lively girl who made music and art. Puberty began and COVID hit, and she was treated for depression and anxiety, at times very severe. Her teachers shared any concerns with me so her treatment could be adapted. The transparency ended in August of 2021 when Sage started high school. She started a public high school, and she told me that all the girls there were bi, trans, lesbian, emo, and she wanted to wear boys' clothes and be emo. Because I saw it as just a phase, it was fine with me. But at school, she told them something different. She was now a boy named Draco with male pronouns. Sage asked the school not to tell me, and they did not tell me, even though I informed them of her mental health history and medication. If I had known, this would be a much different story. She was terribly bullied. No one told me, but boys followed her, touched her, threatened violence and rape. Something happened in the boys' bathroom, but for 2 days, the school told me nothing. They kept meeting with Sage alone, and she became so distraught, they called me to pick her up. That evening, I found a hall pass labeled Draco, and Sage told me she was identifying as a boy, and that her counselor said she could use the boys' bathroom. She'd been jacked up against the wall by a group of boys. She was crying, terrified. I said, just stay home, we'll figure it out. That was my last conversation with Sage for 5 months. The night she ran, she thought to a young friend she'd met online. She left a note saying she was scared of what would happen if she stayed. The sheriff, FBI, search dogs were called in. I dropped to my knees in prayer.
Can you believe this story? Here is a mother, a grandmother. She's both, if you follow the story there. She had adopted this child from her son. But here she is, she tells the school, you know, my child's facing some challenges emotionally. We've got her in some counseling. She needs some help. And when she gets into junior high, suddenly she comes in contact with this ideology, these teachers that say, oh no, here's really what you need. You just need to transition. Now also add to the fact that all of her friends are around her. I mean, come on, do you not understand how peer pressure works with children, with teenagers? That, well, if they're shaving their head, I'm going to shave my head. If they're going to jump off the roof, I'm going to jump off the roof. If they're going to transition, I'm going to transition. Well, if they're bi, well, maybe I'm bi. But yet, what this is doing to this young lady, to the point now that the school tells her, you don't have to tell your parents. We'll keep this a secret. You can go to the boys' bathroom. You're a girl, but no, that's what you should. You should do that. And in that bathroom, she is assaulted. Something happens there that, well, You can only imagine with your imagination the horror of what could have taken place there, to the point now that she is so traumatized that the school has to now call her parents. They don't even tell her parents what happened there until the girl is found out by her mom finding the hall pass that the school gave her with this other name other than the name that her boy. Do you want schools doing that? Do you understand what is happening? And then from that, the real nightmare begins, because then Sage, fearful of having to go back to school, fearful of having to be back in that, now runs away from home. Listen to how the story goes.
9 days later, the FBI found her in Baltimore. My baby had been lured online, sex trafficked by DC, then Maryland. She was locked in a room, drugged, gang raped, and brutalized by countless men. It was night. The FBI told us to pick her up in Maryland the next morning. We packed our cars with blankets and stuffed animals and arrived by 8 a.m. But we were told we couldn't see her and were summoned before Judge Robert Kershaw late that afternoon. They didn't even tell Sage that we came for her. We finally entered the courtroom, and Sage appears on a huge Zoom screen from a prison cell. She looks tiny and broken, and I cry out, "I love you, Sage." Sage responds, "I love you too, Nana." But attorney Anissa Khan rebukes us. She is a he, and his name is Draco, not Sage. We were floored. What? Khan accuses us of emotional and physical abuse, that we are misgendering her, even though we just learned she claims to be trans and we're willing to use any name and pronouns to bring her home. My husband was so tearful he kept forgetting the new pronouns, so the judge had the bailiff remove him from the courtroom. I was pleading for my child to be returned and treated for her unspeakable trauma. Judge Kershaw told me if I used the word trauma again, he would throw me out too. For over 2 months, he withheld custody. He housed Sage in a male quarters of a children's home. Sage told me she was the only girl and repeatedly assaulted. She was given street drugs by the other kids, and Khan told her she didn't care. She just wanted to win the case and all the way to Supreme Court if necessary. Khan tried to prove abuse, but we were eventually cleared by both states of all charges. Sage later told me Khan had told her to lie, that we hit her. Khan even had Sage's school counselors testify against us, though they barely knew Sage, and they didn't know us at all. Khan told my precious child I didn't want her anymore. I found out Sage never received any of the letters I sent her. Sage ran from the children's home and disappeared for months. They told me she might already be gone forever, but I couldn't give up, and I finally found a tip on her social media that led the marshals to her in Texas. She had been drugged, raped, beaten, and exploited. This time I was able to be with her for the traumatic rape exam and to bring her home.
Can you believe this? Can you believe what's happening to this child? After the parents warned the school, okay, we need something, and then we find out this incident that happens. She runs away. She's caught up in human trafficking. There, when they finally find her, the horror story, it's got to be a parent's worst nightmare. Thinking that, okay, now the authorities have her, now she's going to be helped, she's going to get some help. Then to find out the advocates there in the court system. The attorney says, oh no, this is a boy, this isn't a girl. And even has the grandfather, removed from the courtroom if he makes the mistake of calling her by the name that he raised her as. And even to the point that the mother is threatened by the judge. Oh no, if you call this a trauma, what else are you going to call this but a trauma? This is the type of thing that is happening. Sadly, it's happening behind closed doors. They house this girl because, oh no, she's a boy. And we're going to reinforce that. This is a minor child. Now she's housed in a boys' facility, and once again, the abuse continues. You say, oh, that's an extreme case. No, this is a case that is being repeated over and over and over. And finally, parents are standing up and speaking about this, and the victims are coming out and speaking about it. See, that's really what Revealing the Rainbow is about. You're going to hear these types of stories. You need to hear these types of stories. But more than that, you're going to hear, what can we do to keep this from happening to your child? Nobody wants to hear this happen to their child. Can you imagine what this mother is going through right now? What Sage is going through right now? Why don't we find out about it? Why don't we reveal the rainbow ahead of time to save our children? But sadly, the story doesn't stop here. No. It gets to the point that they're ready now to bring Sage home. But listen to how it continues.
Back in Virginia, she entered the mental health facility that Judge Kershaw had ordered, as it would affirm her as a male. The therapist began pressuring her to have her healthy breasts removed. Sage was too scared to protest, but she asked me to secretly buy her girls' clothes because she wanted to be a girl, but keep them in the car. It took a kind lawyer, Josh Hetzler, to secure her discharge. After almost a year, Sage was finally home, safe, alive. Sage is receiving professional trauma care. The first trafficker has already been convicted. Sage has nightmares, panic attacks, rape-related medical issues, but there's hope. I told her she's not broken, she's just scarred. And part of that hope is that in courageously sharing her story, others will be saved. Sage said she doesn't know who she was back then. She wasn't a boy. She just wanted to have friends. But her school, the judge, the attorney, and the doctor were all blinded by their ideology. The consequences for Sage were unspeakable. Please don't let ideology harm another child. Let parents do our jobs. We know our children best, and we love them 1,000,000 times more. Thank you.
Did you hear what that mother said about Sage? What started all of this? What started this is Sage just says, I just wanted to have friends. And because of the ideology of the day, because of social media, because, oh, this is the latest trend, everybody's transitioning, oh, I'm gay, I'm bi, I'm whatever. She gets caught up in this dark side that now leads to the horror story that you just heard. This is unbelievable. And you saw that even to the point that now that she's back in that institute, that when she was brought back home, they then pushed her to have surgery to alter her physical body. This is tragic. You say, why are you getting so upset about this? I'll tell you why I'm getting upset. I'm not mad at people. Well, I'll take that back. I am very upset with individuals in authority that will take advantage of children to advance their ideology. You heard what that mother said, that the lawyer said. I don't care about you. I just want to get this case won. I want to prove my point at the expense of all of these children. That's why we're having Revealing the Rainbow. I want to encourage you. Sign up for it now. Your friends, if you know people that their children are talking about this subject, they need to hear these stories. They need to hear what can we do, and that's why we're bringing in these individuals. Jim Doman is going to be here. He lived for several years in the gay lifestyle. He's married now, several children. He's going to talk about what it's like to live in the home. He wrote a great book that deals with that I'm Not a Mistake. Because people say, well, you can't change, that's the way you are. There's no bit of science whatsoever to stand behind that. You're going to hear from a former Ladies Professional Golf Association, Chris Olson, that lived as a lesbian. She's going to share her story of how she was caught up. And I mean, we could do a whole program on what this is doing to the sports industry. Well, boys can compete against girls because there is no difference. There's no difference. You're also going to hear from Kevin Wyatt. He is a former transgender female. He's a biological male, lived as a drag queen and that. You know, we got the Drag Queen Story Hour. Why don't you hear the story of really what that has done to drag queens? So he'll be here sharing his story, and one that the tragic story that's right here out of this valley is a young lady by the name of Chloe Cole. She was a former transgender male. She's a biological female. She, just like the story you heard of Sage, was swept into this to the points of having her breast removed. having surgery, puberty blockers, that now has altered her physical life for the rest of her life. She's now realized what a mistake that was. Sadly, she can't go back and change it. All in the name of inclusion, all in the name of, well, let's live and let live. No, this is not live and let live. This is destroying people's lives. And it's not just children, it's adults who's it's destroying. That's why you need to be here. Your pastor, your leader, they need to be at this conference. We've got a special session on Friday night for pastors and leaders. Now, you can get all the information about this by going to our website, cornerstonefresno.com, and look on the event page there. You'll see Revealing the Rainbow. You'll get the bio of all the individuals that are going to speak there. As I said before, this is not like any other conference that we have held. Can I give you one more story? This is from a liberal filmmaker. Now, this is a story that is out of the Dallas Morning News. Let me just read to you a little bit of the story. It says a San Francisco-based filmmaker anonymously condemned gender-affirming care after seeing what happened to her own son and urged fellow liberals not to allow kids' gender identities to go unquestioned. She explained that her son wanted to play with toy guns, dressed as Spider-Man for Halloween, spent a lot of time shirtless, and found humor in bathroom jokes, like all young boys do. As a result, her son's decision stunned the family, but as a, quote, liberal California parent, they decided to support him. So they started moving down that because, again, we're a liberal California parent. The filmmaker then started using the she/her pronouns, calling her son by a new female name, offered to take him shopping for new clothes and to do his nails, and even offered makeup tutorial. She said, quote, "We called 3 local adolescent gender clinics. We could not get an appointment." I didn't know we had adolescent gender clinics. Says the clinics had seen such a huge increase in new patients, they couldn't even put us on a waiting list, the filmmaker wrote. That's when we realized we were not rare. Transgender identities are spreading rapidly, often within social networks. She talked to her child and found out that 5 of the 10 kids in her son's closest friends are now identifying as trans and non-binary. In other words, this is a trend that's going through the friends. Oh, you're going to be that? Well, maybe I am. Well, hey, this is the trad. Well, I'm gay. No, I'm lesbian. No, I'm whatever the case may be. And so they all get caught up in that. If you don't understand that, you've never been a parent. It goes on to say, the filmmaker noticed how many children were in the same boat and felt something other than kids finding their authentic selves was going on here. She wrote that her son was fixated on the medical transition and continued to dress and act like a teenage boy because he wanted to transform physically. She says, quote, "Therapists are not free to explore teens' gender self-diagnosis for fear of losing their license. They, like gender clinics, operate under the American Academy of Pediatrics policy that any kid who says they are trans is affirmed." This is ridiculous. So we've got a child that cannot even get a tattoo, cannot even go to a tanning booth, that now we are affirming. Well, now, if they think they're a boy, then they need to be able to affirm that. And if you tell them not, then you're abusing them. Parents, when are we going to wake up and see what is happening? When are we going to stand up for our kids? Well, the reason why, they perish for a lack of knowledge, the Bible says. Let me play for you one more news story. This, again, is the story of this mom that I just talked about.
I just want them to stop keeping parents in the dark.
California mom Aurora Regino's 11-year-old daughter was living a double life at Sierra View Elementary School. The 5th grader was a girl at home and a boy named Jaden at school. Regino is suing the Chico Unified School District to put a stop to their parental secrecy policy, which she says allows students to switch genders without parental notification or approval.
They were talking to my daughter about different support groups in town to help her with her transition, and then discuss breast binding with my daughter that I had no knowledge of.
Regino's daughter has since identified once again as a female.
Parents have the right to direct the upbringing and education of their kids.
Kate Anderson is senior counsel and director of the Center for Parental Rights at Alliance Defending Freedom.
These schools who are coming up with these policies where they push a child towards a gender transition and lie to parents about that are violating the United States Constitution.
The Chico Unified School District declined our interview request, but addressed Regino's lawsuit at a recent school board meeting.
We are currently researching these issues and consulting state agencies.
Emotions from parents ran high.
Not every kid seeking emotional support is a candidate for gender transition.
My daughter, the last 2 years, has been asked for her pronouns on the first day of school.
Policies of school districts that say if a child says, "Don't tell my parents," the educators will not tell their parents, essentially condones deception. In fact, it's teaching children it's okay for you to lie to your family. And I think that's a terrible lesson for young people.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that actually schools are telling their kids, don't tell your parents, while they're instructing them about breast binding? I'm sorry, that doesn't come under reading, writing, and arithmetic. Why do I want a teacher telling my child that they need to transform their anatomy and from binding to surgery to chemical castration? You say, boy, you're getting graphic, Pastor. Yes, I am. Well, you're just mad. You're just one of those haters. You're just phobic. No, I tell you what, it's not who I'm mad against, it's who I'm standing for. Your kids need to be protected. And you as a parent, we as leaders in this community, we need to see what the dark side of this rainbow is. It's not all just rainbows and lollipops and unicorns. And no, you're going to hear the story in our conference on Revealing the Rainbow of really what is happening. I don't know how much that happens. Yeah, say that till it's your child. Say that till it's your son or daughter, until it's your friend. And then tell me that these things don't matter. You need to go to our website, cornerstonefresno.com. Go to the events page. The name of the conference is Revealing the Rainbow. It's on March the 24th and 25th. It's a special session on the night of the 24th for leaders, and then the main conference is on that Saturday, the 25th. Who needs to come to this? Parents need to come to this. Anybody dealing with this issue in any way need to come to. Pastors and leaders need to come to this. You're going to get information that you're not going to say, well, I heard somebody said, I read a story. No, you're going to hear from the mouths of these individuals, personal testimony. You'll have a chance to ask them questions. This is going to be one of the most informative and I believe one of the most life-changing conferences that we've had. The scripture says it this way, they shall know the truth and the truth will set them free. The Bible tells us to speak the truth. We're going to speak it in love. Let me just say right now, I'm not against anybody. I have friends of mine, family members that are in the LGBTQ community. But I see what it's doing to them. I see the stories that we are going to share on that day and that there are story after story about. I don't want it to happen to them. I don't want them to be swept up in this. I want them to see exactly what is happening. This whole thing will live and let live. That's what they want to do. Well, okay, adults, that may be one thing. But when you're telling a child they need to transition, when you're telling a child, an adolescent child that can't even decide from one day to the next what their favorite color is or their favorite flavor of ice cream is, and now you're wanting them to pick out their gender, telling them they don't know and don't tell mom and dad, and it is driving a wedge between your values. Help us get the word out about this. I really believe this is the issue of the day because it deals with our children and it deals with the parental authority. Jim Doman, former homosexual, that's going to be there. Chloe Cole, she's from right here in the Valley. Former transgender male, biological female. Kevin Witt, former transgender female, biological male. One of those that operated as a drag queen. And then you're going to hear from Chris Olson, former lesbian. She was with the Ladies Professional Golf Association. You'll hear the actual stories. And then, of course, I want you to join us for services today, 9 and 11 o'clock at the historic Wilson Theater. We're seeing lives changed. We're seeing miracles, literal miracles that are happening in people's lives. Aren't you ready for real? Aren't you ready for the reality of what God can and will do in your life? Join us today, 9 and 11 o'clock, Sundays, here at the historic Wilson Theater. God bless you. Thank you for watching today, and as I always say, I'd like to see you in church today.